I'm going to show you how I turned this sequence from Spirited Away into 3D. Let's get into it. So the first thing I started off with was just modeling the little wood part under the rails with an array modifier. This was really just the block out part, so I wanted to get the camera angle aligned with the railway in a sense, and I was mostly looking at the top corners and seeing how everything lined up. So checking back with the reference, I'm kind of looking back at the angle of the perspective just to get everything lined up. Then I went ahead and just jumped straight into modeling one of the planks because it was part of the array. I started modeling the rail part of the plank, and I regret doing it this way because it ended up being a bit of a headache separating everything, and I should have just done it separate in the first place. But yeah, just giving it a simple shape, really keeping it low poly, and beveling the corners here because the kind of rounded at the top there. And then here I'm making up for my mistake and separating everything, and it would have been easier if I had just modeled it separately instead of doing all this cleaning up of the geometry stuff. Yeah, here I'm like fixing the normals, all this weird stuff that could have totally been avoided if I was just a little bit more careful. I went ahead and just beveled the plank, really kept the modeling really simple on that. Added a texture from Polyhaven, and then added a simple metallic texture to the rails. I'm like tweaking the anisotropy here a little bit so that the reflection looks kind of like the way I want it to, so it's kind of going along the rail, and I really like that. But there's also like this grime and scratches and stuff. I made it brown and then added a noise texture to start to break up some of that color a bit, and then I just like stretched it out in one direction to make it look like it has these like really long scratches on it, and of course a color ramp to give it a bit of like roughness variation. Adding a couple loop cuts to the plank here just to add a bit of like wear and tear, making it look not super even. So I'm just moving different parts around just to make it look worn and broken. So next I added the gravel underneath, which was just a plane with, again, a Polyhaven texture on. It has this really nice displacement on it. Then I brought in these scans that I took of grass. They're not great scans, but they work for this animation. And so I'm just kind of like using the proportional editing tool to tuck this one part of the grass under the rock so that it kind of like blends with the grass really well. And then I just duplicate it, and I use the same piece of grass like everywhere in the whole scene. So just kind of swap out what I had before, which wasn't necessarily working for me. And yeah, just kind of like position them, mirror them, duplicated them in a way where it just fills the space nicely. Then I take all of that stuff and put it into a collection and then instance that collection. And then I move it forward to have it repeat forever. I'm cleaning up some of my mistakes and so that the collection fits into a nice perfect little island. Then I bring in a water asset. This is one that I made with the help of a tutorial that I'll link down below, but I've modified it a little bit further myself. I try a couple HDRIs because what I'm really looking for is getting the shadow and light on the rails themselves accurate to the reference, but also I want the sun to reflect in a way that we can see the sun, but we can still see all of the stuff under the water really clearly. And I really like this one, how it turned out. And then lastly, I just set the keyframes for the camera. I set a position here, move the camera forward a bit, and then set a new position and make it vector so that it stays the same speed the whole time. So after all of that, with a bit of motion blur and color correction, here's the final result. I also made this sequence in 3D, and if you want to see the full process, the little island and the sea railway, all of that is a double feature on Patreon. You can also download the project file for the sea railway. See you later. Peace.